Boston Blackie is a fictional character created by author Jack Boyle. Blackie, a jewel thief and safecracker in Boyle's stories, became a detective in adaptations for films, radio and television, an enemy to those who make him an enemy, friend to those who have no friend. Actor Chester Morris was the best-known Blackie, playing the character in movies and on radio in the 1940s. Boston Blackie is the role for which Morris is best remembered. Literature. Jack Boyle's stories first appeared in the early 20th century. The Price of Principle was a short story in the July 1914 issue of the American magazine. Boyle's character also turned up in Cosmopolitan. In 1917, Red Book published the novelette Boston Blackie's Mary, and the magazine brought the character back with The Heart of the Lily. Boyle's stories were collected in the book Boston Blackie, which was reprinted in 1979 by Greg Press. Films. The earliest film adaptations were silent, dating from 1918 to 1927. Columbia Pictures revived the property in 1941 with Meet Boston Blackie, a fast, 58-minute B-feature starring Chester Morris. Although the running time was brief, Columbia gave the picture good production values and an imaginative director. The film was successful, and a series followed. In the Columbia features, Boston Blackie is a reformed jewel thief who is always suspected when a daring crime is committed. In order to clear himself, he investigates personally and brings the actual culprit to justice, sometimes using disguises. An undercurrent of comedy runs throughout the action detective series. In one of these films, After Midnight with Boston Blackie, the character's real name was revealed to be Horatio Black. Chester Morris gave the Blackie character his own personal charm. He could be light and flippant or stern and dangerous, as the situation demanded. His sidekick, the Runt, was always on hand to help his old friend, Georgie. Stone played Runt in all but the first and last films. Charles Wagenheim and Sid Tomac, respectively, substituted for Stone when he was not available. Blackie's friendly adversaries were Inspector Faraday of the police and his assistant, Sergeant Matthews. Matthews was originally played as a hapless victim of circumstance by Walter Sandy. He was replaced by Lyle Lattle, who played it dumber, and then by comedian Frank Sully, who played it even dumber. Blackie and Runt were often assisted in their endeavors by their friends, the cheerful but easily flustered millionaire Arthur Manleader, and the streetwise pawnbroker Jumbo Madigan. A variety of actresses, Adele Mara and Anne Savage, took turns playing various Gal Friday characters. The films are highly typical of Columbia's B-movies of the 1940s, with an assortment of veteran character actors, new faces on the way up, and stock company players familiar from Columbia's features, serials, and short subjects. The series was also a useful training ground for promising directors, including Edward Dmytryk, Oscar Boetticher, William Castle, and finally Seymour Friedman. The Boston Blackie series ran until 1949. Films. Radio. The Boston Blackie radio series, also starring Morris, began June 23, 1944, on NBC as a summer replacement for Amos and Andy. Sponsored by Rinser, the series continued until September 15 of that year. Unlike the concurrent films, Blackie had a steady romantic interest in the radio show. Leslie Woods appeared as Blackie's girlfriend Mary Wesley. Richard Lane played Inspector Faraday. Harlow Wilcox was the show's announcer. On April 11, 1945, Richard Colmar portrayed Blackie in a radio series syndicated by Frederick Ziv to Mutual and other network outlets. Over 200 episodes of this series were produced between 1944 and October 25, 1950. Other sponsors included Lifebuoy soap, Champagne Velvet beer and R&H beer. While investigating mysteries, Blackie invariably encountered harebrained police inspector Faraday and always solved the mystery to Faraday's amazement. Initially, friction surfaced in the relationship between Blackie and Faraday, but as the series continued, Faraday recognized Blackie's talent and requested assistance. Blackie dated Mary Wesley, and for the first half of the series, his best pal Shorty was always on hand. The humorless Faraday was on the receiving end of Blackie's bad puns and wordplay. Television. Kent Taylor starred in the Ziv-produced half-hour TV series The Adventures of Boston Blackie. Syndicated in 1951, it ran for 58 episodes, continuing in repeats over the following decade. Lois Collier appeared as the inevitable love interest and Frank Orth as the perpetually exasperated LT. Faraday. This time, Blackie was set in Los Angeles, and the character enjoyed the use of several exotic sports cars as he battled on behalf of those who have no friends. Whitey was the precocious dog. Among the guest stars were veteran actors Roscoe Attis, Russ Conway, and John M. Picard. Graphic novels. Scripter Stefan Petruha and artist Kirk Van Wormer created the graphic novel Boston Blackie with a cover by Tim Seelig. A jewel heist at a costume ball goes horribly wrong, and the 5-year-old son of the wealthy Green family disappears and is presumed dead. The body is never found. The main suspect is Boston Blackie, who is still haunted 7 years later by what happened that night. Drawn back into the case, he finds that the truth of what happened that night is awash in a watery grave. A sequel to the graphic novel was published years later. In popular culture, a 1957 Daffy Duck cartoon, Boston Quacky, is a direct parody of the serial, with Daffy as the detective, who needs everyone else's help to solve his case. Jimmy Buffett's song, Pencil Thin Moustache, references Boston Blackie, as does the Coasters' song, Searchin', and some versions of the Wabash Cannonball. Boston Blackie's Restaurant, a bar and grill with locations in Chicago and Deerfield, Illinois. In a 1966 episode of Bewitched, Boston Blackie is mentioned in fond remembrance by Aunt Clara, who confuses him as attending the first Thanksgiving with famous pilgrims. In Errol Morris's 1988 documentary, The Thin Blue Line, interview subject Emily Miller cites Boston Blackie as an inspiration for wanting to become a detective, or the wife of a detective. The film's score by Philip Glass also has a cue titled Boston Blackie. In Chuck E. Vice's 2014 release, Red Beans and Vice, track 3 is entitled Boston Blackie, and comprises 4 verses, sandwiching 3 repetitions of the chorus. The chorus lyrics include, "I'm just like Boston Blackie, yes I am, and derived from the original stories. The wording, friends to those who have no friends, in a 2007 television episode of Mad Men, when talking about John F. Kennedy as a potential opponent for 1960 presidential candidate Richard M. Nixon. Character Bert Cooper says, "It's going to be Kennedy."